And we're live. Good morning, everyone. This is Jorge Silva Puras. I'm the Dean at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. And today I have a special guest, Sarah Kresh, who works in our Office of Faculty Development and Instructional Technology, better known as OFDIT. So for those of you who are familiar with SPS, either faculty or staff, you probably have heard that acronym, OFDIT. Again, it stands for the Office of Faculty Development and Instructional Technology. And Sarah is one of the masterminds behind OFDIT. And we're so honored and delighted to have you today, Sarah. So good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And as always, Sarah, I like to start the interviews with a little bit of background about the interviewees. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your story, your background, how you got into higher education, and then we can go specifically into instructional design and use of technology and everything else that you do at CUNY SPS. So why don't we start with a little bit of your story?
Sure. Thanks. So I came to higher ed after a first career in also in education, though. So I started off my career teaching English as a second language to adults in Montreal, in Quebec, Canada. And I've always had an interest in languages. So I pursued graduate studies in linguistics at the CUNY Graduate Center, and that's how I wound up in the New York City region and at CUNY. I wound up having the great fortune of having an appointment as an instructional technology assistant at the Office of Faculty Development and Instructional Technology at SPS. That started in 2015, and it was just a real eye-opener. It was just so gratifying to work with faculty, to work with instructional technology, and to have just fantastic guidance and mentorship from Antonia Levy at OFDIT at the time, and then Susan Coe as well at the time. So I just developed an interest in it. It sort of combined my interests in technology with my interests in education. And my undergraduate degree was actually in communication studies and sort of tech focused on multimedia. So it combined all these interests. So eventually I went ahead and completed an instructional design certificate at the Online Learning Consortium and continued to work at OFDIT. And at this point, I'm full-time at OFDIT. I manage new faculty programming, including Blackboard Basics, preparation for teaching online, peer mentoring program, and also the online teaching essentials workshop for CUNY faculty, and also OER initiative programs at SPS.
That's a pretty full plate, Sarah.
Yes.
Well, so what would you say requires most of your time of all those functions you do within OFDIT? If you had to identify what is your primary role at OFDIT?
Well, I think it's quite balanced, actually. It's about a third working on programs related to new faculty at SPS, and about a third on the OTE, and about a third on OER initiative projects at this point. Maybe more like 50% OER.
So, and yeah. For the benefit of the audience, again, OTE is online teaching essentials, and OER is open educational resources. And we'll talk about those in a moment. But before we get into OERs, which is the subject of today's interview, I love to provide a little bit of perspective to the audience on OTE, the Online Teaching Essentials. Because CUNY SPS, part of a wide system, the CUNY system that has hundreds of thousands of students in New York City, but CUNY SPS has been since the beginning the leader in online instruction and teaching. So, but can you describe what OTE is and how CUNY SPS has offered that widely?
Right. So the online teaching essentials. So as you said, SPS has been sort of at the forefront of online, especially fully online education at CUNY for many, many years. And we have, as far as I know, always offered some preparation for instructors and faculty throughout CUNY on how to teach online and best practices in online teaching and learning. The Online Teaching Essentials Workshop specifically grew out of that program and is a program that was developed in the spring of 2020 to address the need to train many, many faculty in online teaching at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So when CUNY went fully remote in I believe in March of 2020.
March of 2020, correct. Yeah. So at that time, SPS, which is just one of 25 schools and colleges across the CUNY system, took the lead in terms of preparing faculty in the other 24 colleges and schools on how to teach online, or at least the essentials of how to teach online. Of course, that is a skill that you develop over time. We're not expecting someone not familiar with the process and the modality and the techniques of teaching online to learn it right away. But we did compress that learning of years in the making into this OTE program that was offered to thousands of faculty members across the entire system. So congratulations to you, Sarah, and Ruru, and the entire Opted team for that awesome support in a moment of need for our faculty and our students. So that is fantastic. Now, the second acronym that we used earlier is OER, which again stands for Open Educational Resources. And for some in the audience who might not know what that means, can you maybe give us a brief explanation of what OERs are and how they work?
Sure. So open educational resources are basically resources that are openly licensed. They might be in the public domain, but they're explicitly licensed as open for reuse. They're freely available and they're modifiable. So if you adopt an open educational resource and there's some aspect of it that isn't consistent with your pedagogical goals, you can modify it. Oftentimes people refer to the 5 R's of OER. So these are your right to retain the materials, to reuse the materials, to revise the materials, remix them, and redistribute them. And this is key because you can provide students with materials and you can distribute them to them, and then the students can retain those materials. So oftentimes, if you think about being a student and your decision about whether you're going to buy a textbook or not buy a textbook, sometimes it's really key to be able to retain those materials if they're materials you're going to be using in future courses. So it's really wonderful to be able to provide students with materials that they can retain and reuse for free themselves throughout their academic journey.
So that's one of the biggest advantages and opportunities that OERs represent for students. It's dramatic saving. I believe the last estimate we had of savings at SPS is hundreds of thousands of dollars that our students have saved in terms of open educational. If you compare it to, say, spending $250 for a textbook, it is a dramatic saving that our students can generate, correct?
Yes, and I'll just correct you that at this point, the total savings to students from the OER initiative at SPS since it's New York State first approved the initiative and funded the initiative in 2017, we're up to probably over $2.5 million saved to students. Yeah. So
million savings.
I beg your pardon?
$2.5 million, you said, in savings.
Yeah, so in fall of 2022, we reached 2.3 million, and I haven't added in the spring numbers yet, but I'm sure we're over 2.5 million. And what that amounts to per individual student in an individual course is on average savings of around $60 per course. So if you think about a student, you know, and all the courses that they're completing over the time of their degree, that's considerable savings. And it's such a benefit to students. It's really,
it is. And as Lisa is putting on the comment section, students can also contribute to OERs depending on how you set up your course, right? So it could be a process by which contributions from students can make that OER even more valuable to classmates and to colleagues, because that can be, as you said, it's an open source, modifiable asset that can be improved upon, kind of like Wikipedia in a way, right? That you have many people contributing into the material, and there is a level of quality involved that I would like to address. Because some of the objections I've heard historically, and this goes a little bit to what might be the opposition of some people out there to OERs, is the level of quality of the material. So maybe you can address that for us, and maybe share a little bit or demystify some of the common myth regarding OERs.
Sure. And I think that view of OER is dissipating, that people are more open to OER because many OER are, especially textbooks, for example, you know, these are actually peer reviewed. So that was one of the concerns early on, that there might be some issues with the quality of the materials because they aren't, you know, they weren't peer reviewed. But many of them are peer reviewed. They're edited by faculty peers within the field. They've been revised. Many of them, you know, there are open educational resource textbooks in most introductory courses and most subjects at college level. And those have actually been around long enough to be revised. So I think the quality question is, you know, it's kind of moot at this point. I think that one of the concerns for faculty always is that you need to pick your materials in relation to the course you're teaching, your students, the learning objectives of your course. And as the faculty teaching a course or designing a course, you know, you are the content expert. So you really are in a position to judge the quality of the materials. And when there are weaknesses in materials, the advantage of an OER is that you can go ahead and modify the OER to improve it for your students, or customize it for your course and your students.
And I'm going to put a link on the video. It is the link to one of those OER providers that I personally use quite often. It's OpenStax, very high quality materials. This is an initiative that resides at Rice University in Houston, Texas. They have a wealth of high quality peer reviewed textbooks. I personally teach business and entrepreneurship courses and have used many of those books, and they are of excellent quality. The other advantage that OERs have, at least OpenStax and many others, is that the student can choose whether to use the completely free digital version of the textbook, but they can, if they prefer to have a written copy, a printed copy, they can order it. Of course, there's a cost because of the expense of printing, but that's completely up to the student. The course can be taught, and the OER can be offered completely free in a digital format. But if you're interested, you just order the textbook via Amazon or OpenStax directly. and they are relatively inexpensive. I recall maybe $20, $25. I don't know. They vary depending on the length and the subject matter, but they tend to be pretty economical, aren't they?
Yeah, that's a relatively economical option for students if they want a hard copy of a textbook. But students do really appreciate the possibility of having the digital version of the textbook, and having an offline version available to them. Another huge advantage of using OER relative to having students purchase textbooks is that they have access to their course materials on the first day of the course. And this is a big advantage in getting them off to, them getting off to a good start in the course. And it is one of the advantages that's been highlighted in surveys of student experience with OER. Also, the OER can be multimodal, so there can be embedded videos, there can be links out to other resources online. So there's, in some ways, can be a much richer resource for students on a particular subject. So I think, in my opinion, certainly the benefits, just those that we've mentioned so far, outweigh the concerns that some faculty might still have about the quality of the OER. But of course, you always have to choose the content that is right for your course.
Let me interrupt for a second, Sarah, to expand a little bit on what you said about multimodalities or multimedia format of OERs, because we typically tend to think of them as textbooks, but there could be audio, there could be video, there could be exercises, there could be interactive activities that students can engage in virtually, right? Because most of our students at SPS are remote learners. We have 28, we offer 28 degrees, 27 of which are offered fully online. So most of our students require and need that flexibility. And having those materials online actually makes a significant difference in terms of providing that flexibility to our students. So do you have, in terms of those different media, a preference in terms of which you recommend to the faculty that they look at to incorporate into the coursework?
I don't have any specific preferences. I just think that faculty should always make these decisions based on what they're trying to achieve in their lesson or in their module or in their course. I think it's really exciting that there are so many ways of incorporating interactivity into course materials now available to us. So for example, with the Panopto platform, you can incorporate questions into a video. And my colleague at Ofsted, Matt Lewis, and I have offered a workshop in the past called the Open and Active Video Workshop, where faculty can prepare a video that's going to be an OER itself and incorporate these interactions. Or you have things like VoiceThread, where you can have students comment on content. Excuse me. And then also there are H5P interactions in the CUNY Pressbooks platform, so you can have students answer.
H5P, can you define that for the audience who might not be familiar with the term?
I'm not sure I can define the technical aspects, but H5P is, I believe, an HTML5 based sort of application that allows you to create interactives within other content. So within a textbook, for example, you can have questions or simulations, and the students can do their reading. And instead of the end of chapter questions being sort of a passive thing they do by themselves, they can answer the questions in the book and they get immediate feedback.
So as they go through that particular, say, definition or subject matter, the questions appear right then and there, and you can interact in that way.
Yeah. Basically, any instructional technology or educational tool that you can use to have students more interacting more and engaging more with content is going to have a benefit. So whether faculty are interested in using annotation platforms like Hypothesis or Perusal or Manifold, or whether they're interested in having content in Pressbooks and using these H5P interactives, whatever it is that they're interested in doing that gets students more engaged in their courses with the actual content, you know, we're all of us at OFDIT are excited to support all of that.
So I imagine, Sarah, that over time, over the years, the use of open educational resources has increased as a percentage of the courses that we offer at SPS. Can you give us an estimate of how many courses today use total or partial OERs for their content?
So we have data on the courses that are listed in the CUNY registration system as zero textbook cost. Mm-hmm. And in fall of 2022, 40% of the sections that we offered were zero textbook cost. So
which means they didn't have any educational content required to be paid by the student. Is that fair?
That's right.
Okay.
So that could be a combination of what we call true OER, the openly licensed materials, and things that are free to students, so what we would call zero textbook cost. This might be materials that are available at the library. Mm-hmm. This might be other materials that are freely available online.
And by the way, when you mention library, just for the benefit of potential students who might be watching, you don't have to go to a physical library. You can use our virtual library, which is a partnership we have with Baruch College. So all of our students have access to the Baruch content and collections, and they can do it virtually. So they can access it via the web. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. So in addition to those 40% of sections being zero textbook cost, also I think almost all of the gen ed courses, I think something like 98% of the general education courses at SPS are zero textbook cost. So that's really helpful for students because, even if they, in some of their more advanced courses in their degree, there are certain courses that require them to purchase a textbook, they can really get all of their general education requirements taken care of by taking courses that are zero textbook cost.
And Sarah, I have also seen not only zero textbook, but also low cost textbook courses. So I imagine even though 40% are fully zero textbook based, a good portion of those other 60% of sections use some form of open educational resource or a low-cost version of the open educational resource. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't know the number for the low textbook cost courses off the top of my head. Students can also search in the registration system for LTC courses or low textbook cost courses. I think we have a handful of those actually at SPS because we really work to get a course to the zero textbook cost level. But the other thing is, I don't necessarily have data on all the materials and all the courses. So sometimes courses are zero textbook cost or low textbook cost, and I'm not as aware of it. But mostly, yeah, we have those 40% that are definitely zero textbook cost.
So for the benefit of the audience, I put on the screen those two acronyms, ZTC and LTC. Now, it's interesting that it uses the term textbook, but as we said earlier, It doesn't necessarily have to be a textbook. It could be an audio, it could be video materials, it could be multimedia, it could be interactive. But I think it originated with textbooks, right? So I guess the term stuck. When OER started, they were primarily textbooks that were offered. I wonder the origin of the T, of the
Yeah.
C.
Well, I'm not entirely sure about the true historical origins of OER, but the open educational resources are really any materials that you use for educational purposes. And the textbook and the zero textbook cost or low textbook cost, that's a reference to textbook cost, which is a traditional term in higher education courses where you will have required texts and students will have to purchase those. So it's a little bit of they're two separate things in a sense, but if you have a course that's using open educational resources, it will be zero textbook cost because there's no cost to students.
Excellent. Now, I would imagine that while most of our faculty is well versed in OER, maybe members of the audience or faculty members in other institutions might be interested in knowing what does it take to be prepared to develop the most effective use of OERs in your classroom. Are there suggestions that you have or recommendations that you have for faculty in terms of when you're thinking of designing your course? What are some best practices as you assess the possibility of using OERs?
Well, when you're designing your course, as many faculty will know, you want to design it with your learning objectives and your learning outcomes in mind. So I would, recommend thinking about a process like a backward design process where you're thinking about what your learning outcomes are, you're thinking about how you're going to measure your learning outcomes, and then you're selecting your materials and your activities in a way that supports those objectives. So it's essentially the same process, whatever type of materials you're using. And then if there are faculty who are not at CUNY SPS, I would say the thing to do is to reach out early to your teaching and learning center or your library and find the person who can help you identify open educational resources that can help you scaffold materials and activities in your course for students to meet those learning objectives. And if you are at CUNY SPS, you can always check out our OER at SPS website on the faculty community site. You can get in touch with me. You can get in touch with our faculty support email as well, and they'll direct you to our OER team at Ofted. But definitely reaching out to get the help of somebody who's experienced with searching for OER can be helpful. And then the other thing is to just stay open to the possibilities. There are more and more materials available all the time. You can search, there are repositories. There's the OER Commons, for example, a commonly searched one. So I think
I put on the screen the link to the website where you can find more information on open educational resources. I'm also going to put that link on the comments section in case anyone would like to click on it, but I'll leave it up for a little bit. So if you want to write down that URL, you can do so as well. And there, I imagine there's plenty of information on resources, but also which materials we have used in the past, maybe some recommendations, etc. And if faculty members want to get in touch with you, Sarah, or to get in touch with the Office of Faculty Development and Instructional Technology, do you have any preferred method of contacting you?
So they can email me directly. So Sarah Kresh at cuny.edu. And as I mentioned
as well, Sarah with an H, SARAH, .Kresh, KRESH, @cuny.edu. Great. And I'm sorry, I interrupted you. And the other way to get all of you?
Well, at our faculty support at sps.cuny.edu email. That's a great way to get in touch with any of us at Often.
Excellent. I'm putting that on the screen as well. So it's faculty support, all together, no dots, no periods, at sps.cuny.edu. Fantastic. So as I anticipated, Sarah, we are already over the half an hour term of the interview. I think we could continue discussing this for another half hour easily. But I do want to thank you for your attention to the quality of the open educational resources at SPS and at CUNY in general. You do a superb job. We're very, very proud of you and everything that you have been doing for our faculty and our students. So wish you the best. And thank you again for participating. It has been a delight to talk to you. And I look forward, maybe we should do a follow-up on specific OERs, and maybe we can go a little bit deeper into how we incorporate those. Now, particularly that we're migrating to a new learning management system, there might be questions regarding that transition and how OERs can be transferred between one LMS and another LMS. But there may be other questions from the audience. So thanks again. It's a pleasure to see you. And we'll stay in touch. So have a great week and see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.